I was talking about before about the Rockefeller drug laws and race and incarceration in the United States by using one of the chapters here that looks at some of the issues related to race in the criminal justice system and tries, at least in the short pages in that chapter, there's actually an excerpt or a larger piece about why the criminal justice system views particularly African Americans and Latino people the way, and how these assumptions go into are fed by people's attitudes towards race, the way we socially construct race. Okay, race is not necessarily a natural category, because if you look at it, there's some strange things when you notice. So one of the things we're going to talk about, and also some of the chapters, I believe for today as well, were the social construction of social problems. If not, I think that's the next time as well. Also, keep in mind a few things before we get started here. The time bind, you need to start reading that, so check the syllabus. Okay. The test is due Tuesday, right? Or is it Thursday? Thursday. I'll check that. Okay. I swear it was the 28th.
No, it's Thursday. The other class is Tuesday.
No, because that one said the 1st when I pulled it up. I'll look it up here in a minute. Anyway. Okay.
You're right. It's Tuesday. It's Thursday.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So by Tuesday, you actually have readings in time bind. I think it's just the first chapter. Does anybody have the syllabus on you? Anyway, when you get the answer, tell me. Regardless, I just want to keep your heads up that we're moving to a new book. It's a time bind. It's a good book. It's about work and family. We're going to come back to some of the issues we were talking about with marriage, divorce, economics, the government. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're also going to examine how she did her study. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right? But before we get to all that stuff, there's a very important concept we need to talk about. In particular, today we're going to be talking about one of the ideas of social constructionism is that concepts that we take for granted, like things like gender, things like regional culture or culture itself, or particularly race, are actually not in and of itself have objective meaning. Particularly the racial categories that people break into. What is it? Like the word white, that means, and I know that some people that means a lot, that means absolutely nothing to me. That tells you nothing about who I am, does it? As far as I'm concerned. And I'll tell you right now, you see this board? Let me do it where the camera can see me. That board is white. I'm sort of an off peach color. But I guess it doesn't sound as good when you yell peach power or something like that. You peach people, you drive me crazy. Oops. Anyway. Or if you take a look at the word Asian American, what does that mean?
Yellow.
Huh?
Yellow.
Well, that's what it means to some people, right? But I would say, what's your ethnic background?
I'm Filipino.
Do you consider yourself to be yellow? Well, the wall is yellow, right? On top of it, more importantly than the element of color, which is a big part of this, right? You know, is the idea of why are we calling people Asian when the Asian continent is the biggest continent on the face of the earth. There's somewhere near 4 billion people that live in Asia, and very few of them look alike or have similar cultures. You're telling me there's no difference between somebody who's from Thailand and somebody who's from Taiwan? Or somebody who's from Korea versus somebody from India? That there aren't differences? You go to China, there's something like 40 or 50 different ethnicities there. There are Islamic people in the west of China. Okay? So these, or what's it mean to be African American or black? What's that mean? Because one of the problems here, Malcolm X mentioned this, do African Americans in this country, and I would say most European Americans too, do they know what country they're from in Africa? Do you know if you're Kenyan? Let me put it another way. Do you think people from Kenya and Nigeria confuse each other? Walking down the street? Or let me put it another way. Do Africans view themselves as Africans or Kenyans? And Botswanans? Think about it.
View themselves as like a country or something.
Yeah, if you're from Egypt, you're Egyptian. But you're also African. But you're not black. So what's that mean? And are there not indigenous, but are there white people that are born in Africa?
Yeah.
So they're Africans.
Yeah.
So if they came here, they'd be African American. Do you see that this isn't so simple, that we think race is this concept that's like got walls around it? And it does have meaning, but it has meaning, and this is very much a symbolic interactionist perspective. For individuals. But the material that we use to define what's it mean to be black, or what's it mean to be white, or what's it mean to be Asian, or what's it mean to be Latino, or Arab, or whatever it is, these things are actually given by big institutions. Right? The media sends signals. The government sends signals, right? So you can put the government here too. The idea here, and I'll give you a definition of this later, and you can actually see it in the thing. The idea that social construction is that, look, the things we take for granted, even like gender. Somebody tell me what's the traditional dress in Scotland?
Kilt. Dress.
So how are you supposed to tell who's a woman and who's a man?
She's got a beard. Hairy legs.
I've seen women with beards.
Have you really?
Yes.
I've yet to see that.
Go to Coney Island. Trust me. But maybe it's fake. Who knows? Well, how about this? What about RuPaul? Is that a man or a male or a female? How about hermaphrodites? Is it clear what people's gender is? You ever seen The Crying Game? Didn't Hilary Swank play a boy?
Yeah, I think she wanted something
Yeah.
for it.
And the difference, and one of the differences, look, it's easier to determine what somebody's sex is, right? Whether or not somebody has genitals, one type of genitals versus the other. Was it always clear when they put clothes on and makeup on? Aren't there these? Anybody ever seen Degrassi?
Yes.
What's the role? What is gender is clear on that show? Isn't there a woman technically who dresses up like a boy?
Yeah.
I actually have a student, she was in my class. She was technically a girl. She had body parts of a female, but she preferred to be called him and he. But it was clear that this was a woman. Also, just the elements of masculinity versus femininity. Anybody ever watch Mike and Mike in the morning on ESPN?
Yeah.
Mike Greenberg describes himself as a metrosexual. What's that mean?
Not like when you say you're not gay, but then you do.
But you're dainty, and you like to get your nails done, and you like
You're just more fun.
smelly cologne. Yeah. Does it mean there's something wrong with that? How about, and then his partner, Mike Golick, because Greenberg he went to Northwestern, he was an intellectual, he's a pseudo-intellectual. And the people tease him and say, you're really petite. Like they use the language of and they play off this. And his partner is Mike Golick, who's this big, disgusting, former football player. For some reason, he's from Ohio, and he went to Notre Dame. And if I ever meet him, I'm going to smack him. Because how dare you not go to Ohio State, go to that ridiculous school in Indiana. Anyway, but that's your own problem, okay? And I have nothing wrong with Notre Dame's academics. I hate their football team, okay? That's the problem. And every team that played Ohio State, they've gotten their ass kicked, so take that goal. But they play this off like he's the disgusting slob on the show. He burps and is kind of, and he talks about how, like Greenberg loves Justin Bieber. Mike can't stand, this is what I love. At first he couldn't stand Justin Bieber. And then and Golick's got like 3 daughters. So his daughters and his wife forced him to go see this Justin Bieber movie. And supposedly he loved it. And then they were also arguing, and so this other football player, his name is Stink, Mark Flair, he always comes on the show. He's got a couple Super Bowl rings. He was making fun of Golick going, you're not a man if you're crying at a Justin Bieber movie. But for other people, that's exactly what manhood is. Or if we just look at cultural stuff over time, think about the idea that think about what people in like Amadeus' time, like Mozart's time, looked like. What they looked like. Or you ever seen pictures of what people used to, or representations of what people during Shakespeare's time used to dress like? Men used to dress in tights and wear like frill. You ever seen the pictures of Louis XIV? He looks like a woman. Seriously. Powdered wigs and makeup all over their face. You ever seen Motley Crue? They wear more makeup than almost all the women in the audience, although some of the men in the audience were wearing more makeup. Okay, on and on and on. Right? And some women do this too. Women who go into business wear business suits. So a lot of the things that we think are attributes that are natural based on race or gender are actually things that are socially constructed. Now here I want to get one thing clear, especially when it comes to things like race and gender. There's always this core of biology or genetics in there. Right? Unless you're a hermaphrodite, you're born with one set of genitals. And you can get an operation, but on your birth certificate, it's not going to say female afterwards. Okay? Around it, though, is this gigantic socio-cultural reality where institutions, particularly the media nowadays, and especially things like family, peer groups, and your interaction with these people teach you what it's like to be a male or a female. Right? That's why each one of you has a different idea of what's masculine or feminine. For some of you, if you're a man, for some of you, crying is the worst thing in the world. You wouldn't dare do it in front of your father. Other of you, your father taught you. You can be open with your feelings. But in general, there's this personal view, but also society channels people. Like, this is acceptable. Like, there's an acceptable level of femininity or an acceptable... Like, for example, why do you think people are so crazy about Jeremy Lin? In a good... So we have these restrictions. Now, sometimes... Now, let's back up and we'll go to race and Lin in a second. Let's go to gender. If the society's saying, hey, if you're a man, you got to be masculine. You got to wear boots. You got to burp and be a slob and drink beer and have ripped pants and all this, whatever it is. And you talk a certain way and you act a certain way, and you don't like things like opera. Okay, and you don't drink tea with your grandma with your pinky up. There's just things you don't do, and when you do them, there's ramifications. With race, it's similar too. There's expectations about race, right? And for Asian Americans, is there an expectation that they are great at basketball? For black people, there is, isn't there? So if you're Asian and you play basketball well, there's good elements to that, but you're not going to get a lot of opportunities, are you? Like, you got to ask yourself, why did only Harvard give Jeremy Lin a scholarship to play basketball? And I love that it's Harvard, right? Because what's one of the stereotypes of Asian Americans? Yep. Particularly the areas of math, right? So if you're Asian and you're bad at math, that has ramifications, doesn't it? Somebody thinks there's something wrong with you. And if you're African American and you're bad at basketball, there's something wrong with you too, isn't there? And if you are, let's say you are African American and you want to be a great mathematician or scientist, are people along the way going to look at you like, are you going to have to go against certain obstacles because of people's expectations? You go to MIT and be like, yo man, we don't have a basketball team here. Right? And an Asian American goes to the university or Michigan State. I want to walk on, coach. Here's a calculus book, kid. Get busy. Right? And let's take Hispanic Americans. They get certain even more horrible stigmatism attached to them to some extent about being illegal and about not being able to speak English and not having any education and working at someone's house, scrubbing the floors, right? Black people get assumptions as well as Latino people that if you're young and you're black and Hispanic, what you get, assume that you're involved in. Or just crime in general, right? That you're on drugs, you're a drunk. You know what's funny? If you actually look at the statistics, you know who has the highest percentage of drinking? Yes. But that's not the way it's portrayed in the media, is it? Although every movie I've ever seen about, especially upper middle class white people, they're always drinking scotch with them. I don't even know anybody who drinks scotch. But every movie you see was like some rich business person who got scotch on the rocks in their hand. Sometimes with a cigarette, right? To some extent. So you see, so the media, so it's not just the media, but why do you think, so institutions are involved with this, right? And again, there's been good things for Lin, because basketball likes this type of stuff, but there's been bad things, the Floyd Mayweather thing. There was actually, because I'll let somebody, because I don't really want to say this. Did anybody know that did anybody hear what those two ESPN reporters said about Lin? You know what word they used? Yeah. And they said chink in the armor. And they thought they were being clever. And they didn't understand, the absurdity of that statement, right? So ESPN sent him a signal, this is inappropriate behavior. So they're socially constructing the boundaries of what you can say and how you can say it. Okay? But one of the reasons why they came out was because people were not used to this. And they were also unaware of how, I don't know how you can be unaware that that's an offensive word. Right? And one of the guys said, you wouldn't mistakenly call Kobe the N-word. Right? You wouldn't say the N-word in the armor, would you? I mean, just think about that reality. Right? It also comes down to, you can even take this even farther. Groups that aren't represented in the general public tend to have much less favorable views about them. They have less favorable stereotypes attached to them. Think about how Arab Americans get treated in this country. Every one of them's a suspect, aren't they? Seems like to me. How about Native Americans? There's a team called the Redskins. Could you imagine if we called it the Chicago Honkies? Could you imagine that? Because and Redskins is a way worse word than honkies, right? The Denver Crackers. Yeah, that'd go over real well, wouldn't it? Okay, take your pick of racial epithets. Could you imagine that? Right? I mean, my gosh. So anyway, institutions have a big level to play. Like, for example, the government. Do you know who the government lists as being white? Lebanese people, Syrian people, Iranian people. Do the average white Americans consider Iranians or Lebanese people to be white? No. And I don't think Syrians consider themselves to be white, do you? They might even be offended by that reality. For the longest time, there was no categories for Hispanic. They were just lumped into being white. And if you're Hispanic, you know you don't get treated like you're white. And so were Asians. I mean, they weren't lumped in. They weren't even listed on the census. Like, they didn't even exist. And for the longest, it just took the most recent census to do multiracial people. Like, let's take Obama. What race is he? What race is he? Is he white? Is he black? Some new creation? You can even take this with. You could look at Mexican people. Are Mexican people, are they European or are they Native American? Or are they both? And what's that mean for race? What's Obama's race? I thought this was clear cut. What's his gender? What's his race then? You see how this is not as clear as people think it is? This is what sociology can do here. To make you understand things maybe in a different light, but you didn't view them this way before. Having said that, if you're around, you're white, you tell people you're European American, people think you're pretentious. I'm a European American. From Northern Europe, too, Like, there's a big difference. It's like being from the Hamptons. You don't want to be from East Hampton. I mean, West Hampton. Anyway. Southampton is when you went, but it switches and all this other stuff. Or you don't want to be from the Upper East Side. Anyway, all right. So let's go back to institutions. Why does the media have an enormous role to play nowadays in how we view race and racial stereotypes and other types of concepts, social construction? Why? I should show you this Kaiser Family Foundation about how much people use the media. What do you think an average young person spends engaged in media material, whether music or videos? What percentage of content has racial content in it itself? Does music talk about race and gender and stuff like that? Do certain, let's look at race as well. If you're black and you sing Frank Sinatra's song, are you going to get signed to a record label? Maybe just out of the strangeness of it, right? Where if you're talking about rap and guns and gangs, you see how these stereotypes view how media companies want to even, like, are there any Asian rappers? Are there? Any successful Asian rappers? Not a joke, like William Hung or something like that, which he didn't rap. Think about it, right? And think about how many white rappers there are. You got Eminem and Vanilla Ice and a couple other jokers, right? And don't say Insane Clown Posse. Anyway, okay. So if we agree to some extent that the media contains a high amount of these suggestions about what's right to be male or female, even alternative stuff like the media talks. Hey, the media, look. There's a lot of people in this country who think homosexuality is wrong, right? Does the media present? Does like network television present homosexuality as being a sin? Does Ellen go on her show and go, "Hey, everyone, welcome to the Center Hour. We're going to talk about how you turn people lesbian." Is that what she talks about? Or let's fight against you evil demons who hate homosexuality? No. If you actually look at television is somewhat liberal in its perspective on homosexuality, isn't it? Now, if you look hard enough, can you find people talking against homosexuality on TV? Yep, and if you look on the internet especially. So the internet contains a lot of this material. How many hours a day do you think young people about your age spend with media? Approximately. Just ballpark it.
Like Facebook account. Probably hours. It's probably like 8 hours.
How many? Take a guess.
At least 3.
All right, that's about how much. That's actually, the average American spends 3.5 hours a day just watching TV alone. And the TV's actually on for 8 hours during the day for some god-awful reason. I'm not sure why. Think about it. How many? I bet that 70% of you, the first thing you do in the morning is the TV comes on. And the first thing you do when you come home at night, the TV comes on. Or the computer comes on. Whatever. It doesn't really matter, does it? Huh?
No, you said like the first thing you do anyway, but you turn the TV on. My TV never goes off.
So there you go. And it becomes like a friend that doesn't ask for anything.
I don't watch
Right?
it.
I'll tell you what, if they ever find a way to plug it into your head, I'll probably do it. And if I could ever find a way to watch TV and get paid, I'm going to do it. But I'll tell you right now, look, TV is a great friend. It doesn't ask for any favors. It doesn't bother you. It doesn't drag annoying people over to your house. If you get sick of it, you turn it off and it doesn't get mad at you. It's always there and like the electricity's out. Okay? You don't have to feed it. You don't have to, if you get mad at it, again, it doesn't even know. So it's a great friend. And that's part of the reason why people love television. As much as the internet dominates or is becoming more important, television is still the number 1 media outlet. Okay. So if it's over 3.5 hours, somebody give me, what do you think that people watch on television? How much? Plus television, radio, internet content. What do people do? All this stuff. How much time per day do you think?
It's making out.
Hmm?
It's making out.
We're getting a little closer. It's about 7.5 hours a day. Which that's almost a full work day. And people say, well, that's no big deal. People engage in media content for 7.5 hours. That can't possibly impact their behavior, right? You wouldn't say that if I told you somebody was doing heroin for 7.5 hours a day, would you? Or on the positive side, if someone did charity work for 7.5 hours, wouldn't you think that would make them a better person? Or what if they read books instead of watching TV for 7.5 hours? Wouldn't you think they'd be smarter? So why do we always give the media like a pass that they don't impact people's behavior? Because clearly they do. But before we get to that, let's go back a little bit here to talk about how these social constructed ideas of race, both out in the general society but in the media, impact how the criminal justice system treats race. And then we'll go on to talk about race again. So on page 189, and this is from an article entitled Race and Class in the American Criminal Justice System. It says, equality, however, is a difficult and elusive goal. In our nation, it has been the cause of a civil war, powerful political movements, and countless violent uprisings. Yet the gap between the rich and the poor is larger in the United States today than any other Western industrialized nation. Remember, we talked about that when we talked about class. And it has been steadily widening since 1968. This is a little bit older of an article. But the truths are even worse now, actually. In 1989, the wealthiest 1% of U.S. households owned nearly 40% of the nation's wealth. Can you see why Occupy Wall Street's upset? The wealthiest 20% own more than 80% of the nation's wealth. That leaves precious little for the rest. The income and wealth gap correlates closely with race. And this is why African Americans and Latinos get assumptions like, look, when I go to the subway, nobody's patting me down. When I go into a store to buy clothes, no, the security guards aren't going like this. When a cop pulls me over, he's not searching my car. He's not asking me if I have drugs. Nobody thinks I'm in a gang. Isn't that exactly the type of person that probably should be in a gang? Shouldn't I be the one that the United States... No, I probably shouldn't say that in front of the camera. I'm not a threat. But I'm exactly the type of person that people should be afraid of because I walk right through things. I bet if I got a laboratory coat and a clipboard, I could walk virtually anywhere. But yeah, we're doing a study here for the Department of Transportation. Do you think anybody's going to bother me? Ask for my ID? Okay, so this is part of it. So news stories like this come out and people say, oh, well, all Latino and black people are poor. So that means they must engage in crime. I don't think Kobe Bryant is poor. No, of course he's a basketball player. Or let's take somebody other. The head of Coca-Cola at one point was an African American. I don't think that... the goofy thing is, don't you think that guy still got bothered? To tell you how nuts this is, during the 2000 election, there was an African American federal judge. There was attempts by people in Florida to knock people off of rolls. He was listed as a felon and was knocked off the rolls. When he went to go vote, they said, sorry, sir, federal judge so-and-so, you're listed here as a felon. I doubt, and he had to threaten to sue these people. I doubt that would have happened to Jeb Bush's son or something like that. So race matters, and some of these stories come out, the media constructs this image, and the TVs do it too, or the movies do it too. I think I mentioned this before. What role did Denzel Washington win the Academy Award for?
Green cop.
Yeah. Who was pointing a gun at a white cop in the car, forcing him to smoke PCP-laced marijuana. And then he shot one of his friends, right? Mm-hmm. Remember? And all this because we find out later in the movie that he'd stomped a Russian gangster to death in Las Vegas. And that's why he won the Academy Award. Not for glory, where he played a slave that was in the Union Army. Not for that. Even then, right? And before that, the first person who won an Academy Award was, I think it was Hattie McDaniel, or she played a house slave in Gone with the Wind. Okay? Or let's take, and I know that this movie was very popular. I have not seen it. Has anybody seen the movie The Help?
Yeah.
Even though that's supposed to be sort of, here's the story of these people who are living in my house, isn't it still saying that Latino people, the only thing they can do is clean houses? How come there ain't a movie about a Latino person running for president? Or running a business? Or going to Harvard? Think about that. Strange. You know, and most of the time we don't notice these things. They just become part of the background. Right? Interesting enough, there was a study done on criminal justice that said that 60-some% of people who were arrested had Yankee hats on. And people were trying to say, well, people with Yankee hats on are gangsters. No. All that says to me is the Yankees are real popular and the hats are pretty cheap, and so everybody has one. Right? And people say, why are you bringing that up? Because that sounds as stupid as saying someone who's black is obviously a criminal, isn't it? I don't care what the statistics say. I'm sorry, what race was Bernie Madoff? What race was Timothy McVeigh, who killed all those people in Oklahoma City? What race was Charles Manson? You start to see here? Richard Nixon was white. He didn't have any problems committing crimes. I think one of the main differences is white people don't go to jail as much, do they? You saw that in the Rockefeller drug laws. That's why Obama should probably watch it. They're probably It won't be too hard to convince the American public of something. The ridiculousness that goes on. And I'll tell you right now, there are people who have no doubt that every day they wake up thinking the whole world is going to implode because Barack Obama is the president merely because he's black. You think racist white people in the South are happy with this? And again, what I find funny is that he's as much white as he is black, and just because he looks a certain way. I swear, if everybody was blind, I don't think we'd have a problem with race in this country, do you? Do you? I mean, it really, even though that there's more to race than your skin color, isn't that the predominant way we look at race? Skin color, facial construction, the shape of someone's eyes, the color of someone's hair. I mean, that's the way Hitler determined it. Remember, he had little charts, they test their eye. What's funny about Hitler is, his idea of the perfect race was blonde hair and blue eyes. What was his eye color and hair color? Brown. He actually was part Jewish too. So, you know, he did eventually kill himself. So, anyway, let me go on here with the reading. Minorities' median net worth is less than 7% of that of whites. 9% of white families had incomes below the poverty level in 1992, while more than 30% of black families and 26.5% of Hispanic families fell below that level. Now, racists will tell you, see, that this proves people of non-white heritage aren't ready for responsibility, or maybe doesn't prove that people are racist, and racism has an impact in society. And let me put it this way, when you're poor, is it easy, and you live in a violent neighborhood, is it easy to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and go to Harvard and become Bill Gates? You think Harvard just gives away scholarships to kids who go to bad school? And here's the other thing. You're going to a bad school. What do you think your SAT score is going to look like? If you're from a broken home, do you have any good role models to teach you that, hey, being a lawyer is a good thing to do? Which probably isn't. You should be a doctor. Or this, right? Are you starting to see why young African American boys from the inner city go into sports? It's sold to them as their only way out a lot of the time. And for Hispanics, it's baseball. And Major League Baseball loves the fact that they can get Hispanics from the Caribbean. Why?
They don't have to pay them much.
That's right. They can give them dirt. You go, here's $500,000. What's Fausto's Carmona's real name? He changed his name to come to the. I think it's Roberto Hernandez or something. I swear. Anyway, that's a whole other issue. But again. Okay. Whereas white people are sold sports as an opportunity, but more as a plan B. Right? This is plan B. Plan A is to be a doctor or a lawyer or something. Plan B is maybe I'll be on the X Games like Shaun White. Okay. Although Shaun White didn't have no plan B. But plan A was either succeed or you have your head busted open on a super pipe. So anyway. The consequences of the country's race and class divisions are felt in every aspect of American life. From infant mortality and unemployment, where black rates are double white rates. You go to Detroit, it's even worse. To public education, where the proportion of black children educated in segregated schools is increasing. We had a Supreme Court ruling in 1954 to stop this stuff. The schools are more segregated now in some places than they were before. To housing, where racial segregation is the norm, integrating the rare exception. Didn't I show you I showed you at least that link to the article on the New York Times that showed that Long Island and Suffolk County in particular is one of the most racially segregated areas in the entire country. And I told you part of it has to do with the fact of assumptions. That if I'm a white family and I come into a real estate agency, are they going to put me in a black neighborhood? And similarly with black people. And I'm telling you right now, even if you came in and said, yeah, we want to live in this neighborhood, the real estate agent would be like, are you sure about that? Even if it was a black real estate agent. Are you sure about that? We have this idea in general in society that people are very liberal and people are very accepting and diversity is important. And it is to some extent, but I think that if you go out here, are people hanging out in multiracial groups or in single racial groups? For the most part. Do the white people hang out with the white people and the black people hang out with the black people and Asian people hang out with Asian people and Hispanic people? Is that the way it is? Or is everybody just hanging out? If I go over to the cafeteria, am I going to see a lot of multiracial tables? Keep that in mind when you walk through here next time. Racial inequality remains, to this day, the most formidable of our social problems. That's their opinion, although it is a very serious problem. This inequality is in turn reflected in statistics on crime and the criminal justice system. The vast majority of those behind bars are poor. 40% of state prisoners can't even read, and 67% of prison inmates did not have full-time employment when they were arrested. The per capita incarceration rate, maybe the real problem here, like the divorce issue, is poverty, right? And racism. Per capita incarceration rate among blacks is 7 times that among whites. African Americans make up about 12% of the general population, but more than half of the prison population. They serve longer sentences, have higher arrest and conviction rates, face higher bail amounts, and are often the victims of police use of deadly force in white citizens. Do you think those cops would have beat Rodney King if he was white? Not a chance. Do you think that incident... Go ahead.
What page are you on?
This is 190. Do you think that incident, do you think that a lot of white people were shocked that police would do that? That's how sheltered white people were?
Yeah, I think
This is 1990, this is not 2012.
Middle America probably.
People were, especially wealthy white people, were like, oh my God. And I think that for once in their lives, because when you're not around racism or around different races, you don't see racism, even though you might be racist. I think for the first time people said, everything that, maybe they had a black friend told me about the way the police treat people in inner cities and black neighborhoods, it's exactly right. And that was just one incident. God knows what was happening, right? And I've repeated you repeatedly. And black people make sort of a bit of a caustic joke, and they tell you that there's DWI and there's DWB. Driving while black in a white neighborhood. Like if you go driving through Beverly Hills, like and there's another thing with Hispanics too. One of my friends, he's from Venezuela, and his family lives in the Hamptons, and they get harassed all the time. And I'm sure they get questions like, "Oh, do you run a maid service? Can you come over and clean my house?" His brother-in-law is a former professional soccer player with the MLS team that New York has. I think they're called the Red Bulls now. Right. Thanks, corporations. Anyway. But again, so and also not only harassment, but black people are more likely to face a death penalty too. And most of the times, if you're poor and black, you can't defend yourself in court properly. Okay. Whereas if you're O.J. Simpson, you get I know some of you don't know this. The reason why the Kardashians are famous is O.J. Simpson. Robert Kardashian, their father, who was a great man. Maybe not great, but a good person. And a great lawyer, I would put that. And unfortunately now they're being raised by Bruce Jenner, who doesn't even parent his own children. I don't even want to get into it, but anyway. But the reason why the Kardashians are around is because of that case. And the reason why and they interviewed jurors afterwards. You know what some of the jurors said why they voted for not guilty? Because they wanted to punish the LAPD for all the things they had done in the past. Several of the jurors said that. They said, we thought he was guilty, but we thought the LAPD had engaged in abusive behavior. Remember the Mark Furman said he'd never said the N-word in his life, and then they found tape later that he'd said that repeatedly. So anyway. If incarceration rates continue their current trends, 1 in 4 young black males born today will serve time in prison during his lifetime, meaning that he will be convicted and sentenced to more than 1 year of incarceration. And remember, what happens to your social reputation and your opportunities once you get thrown in jail, especially for a felony? Yeah, I mean, they take away your right to vote. Almost everybody and their mama does background checks now. You go on a date with a woman, she might do a background check on you now. I'll tell you right now, I would say to anybody who does a background check on your date, you're not going to catch the real child molester and the rapist. You're not going to catch the date rapist because they don't get caught. That's what I would say to anybody who does background checks. All you're catching is the criminals who serve their time. You're not catching Bernie Madoff. You're not catching the BTK killer who killed 11 women and didn't get caught for 30 years. So you hire the BTK killer over me. Stupid physics. I hate physics. Anyway. So these things play into people's belief systems, and then the media reinforces these things. Let's get away from the book for a minute here. And let's talk about an issue here. The NBA's, in the minds of many white fans, has a serious reputation issue. What's the race of the majority of fans in the NBA? What do you think? Especially in places like Minnesota. It's white. It might not be more than like 55 or 56%, but the majority of fans are white. Have you ever seen it? Do you want me to put a picture of J.R. Smith up there? What's J.R. Smith look like?
Tattoos all over.
He's got tattoos all the way up his neck. Like a freak. Like a circus freak at Coney Island or something. Do you think that most white people or decent African American or any race appreciate a weirdo like that? Having their kids watching some weirdo like that? Now, I'm sure J.R. Smith is probably... Does he appear to be somebody who's a criminal? He probably isn't, right? But unfortunately, what he did with his body, to a lot of people, at the very minimum, it looks stupid, right? And childish. You know what people who do this stuff remind me of? You remember those kids in 3rd grade who used to write on their arms with permanent markers? That's who these people are. I don't mind if you get a little tattoo honoring your mom or your fraternity on your shoulder, but when you look like Jesse James's girlfriend, you've not Sandra Bullock. You've stepped over the line for a lot of people. Remember about the zone of acceptability? It's socially constructed in the society that if you have tattoos, they call them job killers on your neck. It's over. If you even have my dad, who got divorced from my mom after about 7 years, he's got his name on this hand and her name on this hand, and they're not even married. Also, when he went and saw the movie Rocky, he got the word Rocky written on his arm. And now he's in his 60s, and it just looks silly, right? And it just, I'm not against tattoos, but again, or how about what did Kobe Bryant get accused of?
Rape.
And remember, what did Gilbert Arenas bring into the locker room?
Gun.
Are you starting to see why this is disturbing to some fans of the NBA, regardless of their race? Are white players bringing guns into the locker room? Did Jeremy Lin bring guns into the locker room? Did Steve Nash bring guns into... And here's the other part. Does that mean that every black NBA player is some kind of a criminal that brings in guns? Did Michael Jordan ever bring guns in? Does Amari Stoudemire bring guns in? Does Carmelo Anthony bring guns in? So most of these people aren't this way. But what's the problem here when you have African Americans? You have this information out about African Americans in the criminal justice system and poverty rate, and then you have people like J.R. Smith or Kobe Bryant or Ron Artest doing what they do. What does that do for people's racial stereotypes?
That's like 2 different, inputs. Oh, the same input, but from 2 different places.
But it reinforces it, doesn't it? It goes, see? It's like, oh,
it's like we told you this.
black and Hispanic people are more likely to be in jail. All these people in the NBA look like criminals. They must be criminals. Right?
That's just stigmatism, though.
But people do it. Why do you think people are so all... Again, I will go back to at least some semblance of understanding of why Floyd Mayweather said that. First of all, Floyd Mayweather is a boxer, and boxers love to get attention. So we can at least put that up. But Floyd Mayweather said if Jeremy Lin was black, no one would be paying this much attention. Now, I think he's partly wrong, first of all, because the Knicks have stunk for so long. It doesn't matter if somebody was purple. And they were just slamming it. If they were from Mars, it'd be like, man, let that Martian go. You know, I mean, it wouldn't even matter to some extent. But he is right in the sense that it is less common. And I think for a lot of the NBA fans, and maybe I'll just pose this as a question. Do you think some of the NBA fans would, especially white NBA fans, would prefer to cheer for Jeremy Lin than somebody like Kobe Bryant or Gilbert Arenas?
Well, yeah, because Jeremy Lin doesn't rape people.
Well, again, Kobe was actually the charges were dropped. He had very minimum cheated on his wife and then bought her a $4 million ring. Which, thanks a lot, Kobe. You ruined. There ain't a guy in this world that's ever going to get away with anything now, man. I mean, my God. Anyway, but again, you know, or remember when what did Ron Artest do? What was his big moment in fame?
The worst person ever.
Well, huh?
Yeah, like, world peace.
Whatever it is. But you guys, you ever heard of remember when he played for the Pacers, what happened? He attacked the fans! And they happened to be white. What had happened, maybe if we have time next time, I'll show this to you. Ron Artest committed a heavy foul against Ben Wallace of the Pistons. And the game was over. And they were in Detroit. And you don't start fights in Detroit. Seriously. I mean, my God. It's like starting a fight in downtown Baghdad. You're in trouble. You're going to get hurt. I mean, there's a lot of people who have nothing to lose in Detroit, and they're looking for a fight. I'm saying it's like a bar. Some bars where guys go, I'm going to get in a fight. Reminds me of Days Confused. Came here to do two things, drink beer and kick ass, and I'm almost out of beer. So anyway, but Ron Artest, he committed a hard foul. Ben Wallace pushed him. He went down, laid down on the scorer's table. Somebody in the audience threw a beer up in the air. And it hit him right in the chest. I don't know how. This guy must have been great aim. Ron Artest didn't even look to see who it was. He got up immediately and went straight to wherever he thought it came from. And you see later that the guy who threw the beer is not the guy he punched. So he just started punching this guy. And then it was a Jermaine O'Neal went into the crowd. And then it came out onto the floor. This one guy who had a Pistons uniform on, he was about 4'8". He came out here like this. And I don't remember who it was. It might have been Artest. He just went, BAM! Just knocked him down. And the chairs were getting thrown and people were arrested. It was not a good moment. And unfortunately, I think for the black players in the NBA, the white people in the audience they didn't just see an NBA player starting a riot, they saw a black NBA player starting a riot. Unfortunately. But the issue is here, if you read this, we'll go down here. There used to be no black people in the NBA. It says here, though, this is Lloyd. This player was the first NBA player that made a team. Okay. Since Lloyd made history, the NBA has increased the number of black players to 78%. According to the league's racial and gender report last year, about 83% of the players in the league are people of color. And I think this is one of these areas. I think Americans love to be in denial about racism. Because if you ask people, nobody's a racist, right? Except for maybe some Southerners. There are people in upstate New York who are in the Klan. I mean, unless you're a Klan member, nobody's proud to hold racial stereotypes. But what percentage of the American people do you think, at the very minimum, hold stereotypes? Not hatreds, but stereotypes about race. 70? Anybody think it's about 100? And it used to be it was much more of white people up here looking down and pushing down other people, where now I think it's like crossfire. It's coming from everywhere. Right? There are white people who hate white people. Seriously. And there are black people that don't like black people. Chris Rock made actually a gigantic, remember his little bit about the difference between two types of black people? Yep. Or what he called black people? Right? Chappelle made jokes about this kind of stuff. Have you ever seen The Mad Real World? Now, he actually did that in response because he didn't like the real world. He thought that the real world always would put one black person in a house full of 7 crazy white people and then pretend like this guy's like some kind of lunatic because he lost his mind. And Dave said, you wouldn't like that if we took one white person and put you in a house with 7 crazy black people. Let's see how you like that. And he made this setup. And it was funny, but people thought it was racist too, that it was reinforcing stereotypes. And if you remember the Dave Chappelle, he had the blind guy who thought he was white, so he was head of the Klan. Right. And even then he had Tyrone Biggums, who was like a crackhead. Right, and then Tron Carter, who was dealing coke.
He had the racetrack too.
Right. Where Tiger Woods got drafted by the African Americans, and then he said for nizzle or schnizzle or something. He said, I've been waiting a long time to say that. And then they were going to trade somebody, and then the white team said you got to take OJ first or something like that. So
because the black were trying to take Eminem from the white people.
Right.
Like, no.
So it's actually even though it's supposed to be a comedy skit, it's actually a good display about what do these things really mean, and that there may be a high level, the very minimum racial stereotypes. Let's go to another story here. Here's a story by a commentator, Buzz Buzzington. That can't be a real name. And he was asked to write by his editor. He says, "My editor thinks I should write something about professional basketball." The timing certainly right. NBA's All-Star Extravaganza starts today in Los Angeles. Is that today? I think this might be from today. This might be an older one. Anyway, culminating in the All-Star game on Sunday night. The problem is, I don't really know what to say about the NBA other than I almost never watch it anymore. That's the way I feel about hockey. Get the fighting out. You guys got to stop that stuff. Think about that. Think about hockey. What racial category dominates that sport?
White.
I had a friend from Quebec. His name was Olivier, and he was Haitian, and he played hockey. And I've also at CW Post had African American students who played lacrosse. Do you think when they came in with their athlete uniform on that people thought they played lacrosse or hockey? And I'll tell you right now, if you're black and you want to be an NHL player, oh my gosh, it'd be better to run for, it'd be easier to run for president. We've had a black president. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't go over well, and a lot of the players don't like. Wasn't there one guy that picked on him constantly?
Which one?
There's only one black player in the...
What's his name?
I don't know.
Nah, there's more than one.
There was one.
PK Subban.
One of the first players got tormented. He said that he got things said to him.
Really over? He was the freshman.
I don't know. He was a Canadian.
Yeah, they're all Canadian.
Yeah, there's very few. I mean, think about it. And hockey is an expensive sport.
Yeah.
Even for white people, it's an expensive sport. But if you look at these poverty figures, it's even a bigger aspect. So, but basketball is almost the reverse reality. You want to talk about barely any Canadians. Anyway. I am not a basketball junkie and have no desire to be one. There are maybe 3 players I would pay to watch. The first is LeBron James of the Miami Heat, because whatever you think, and I think a lot less after his free agency melodrama. Now, do people view LeBron as some kind of a problem? Do you think white people look at LeBron and go, I don't like that guy? Do they say, well, he must be a criminal? He's got tattoos all over his body too, doesn't he? All the way down his arm. Maybe it says something like, I love my daughter or something. It doesn't matter what it says. If it's a flaming skull that says, screw everybody, or I'm a terrorist, so I don't think that's going to go over very well. You know, if it's a memorial of your mother's death, then maybe it's a little more acceptable. But LeBron James ain't white, and he gets a lot of attention. He gets probably more attention than anybody. Nobody had a problem with Michael Jordan's race. Okay, but it does matter to some extent. Anyway, despite writing a book with him, he is the best athlete in the world today. The second is Kobe Bryant of the Los Angeles Lakers, and the third is Kevin Durant, all of them black. I don't know what the race of this guy is. He might be black, although I don't know. The game is in trouble, and I don't think there's much dispute about that. Attendance was down last year and is slightly down so far this season, although basketball is supposed to be a team game, and it's become more of a one-on-one in the NBA than a boxing match. And that's one thing that bothers some people of all races, is that the NBA is has become a show-off sport. Although the NFL's that way too. Look at the way they mug for the cameras. The only difference is in the NFL, if you go up and like get in the camera and stuff and go starting crazy, what are the refs going to do?
Flag you. Then you get fined.
Yeah, and if you're on Bill Belichick's team, you're really in trouble. Okay, and I don't think Tom Coughlin's going to like it either. Didn't one of them morons jump up on the camera stand or something? Anyway. Yeah, and he needs to sit down and shut up. Seriously, Chad, whatever his name is, he needs to be quiet, because he's one of the worst wide receivers I've ever seen now. Anyway, the style has changed, and it's definitely a turnoff, but a major problem with the NBA, one that is virtually never spoken about honestly, is the issue of race. I have no hardcore evidence, but based on my past experience in writing about sports, I know that whites ascribe very different characteristics to black athletes than they do to white ones. Like you rarely ever hear someone go, wow, he's had a lot of game intelligence. Like, they'll talk about Steve Nash thinking through the game. Kobe's got natural talent, right? Nobody ever says Kobe's a tactician, although he is, isn't he? You think Kobe's not thinking when he's out? Although, when he drives into the lane, I don't know what he's thinking sometimes. But if you think about it, black people get described more like it's natural ability. White people say, well, he has fortitude and he worked at it. Jeremy Lin just got hustled. Right? They almost call into question, does Jeremy Lin have natural talent? right? Or is it just adrenaline he's working off or something like that, right? So it works both ways. I'll tell you right now, on the playground, I don't care how tall you are, if it's a mixed race group and they're picking basketball teams and you're white, you're probably going to be one of the last ones picked because of this stuff. Anyway, I also make a habit of asking every white sports fan I know, so maybe this guy's black, whether they watch the NBA. In virtually every instance, they say they once watched the game but no longer do. When I ask them if it has anything to do with the racial composition, they do their best to look indignant, but my guess is they felt very different about the game when Larry Bird and John Stockton were playing. And you know what's even messed up? Larry Bird was one of the greatest players the NBA has ever seen. You know what player from the other team they used to put on him to guard him?
Magic Johnson.
Well, when they were playing the Lakers, but it was usually the white dude.
Or we drop threes.
They stopped doing that after a while. They were like, here, put the white guy on the white guy. We're not going to waste one of our good players. And you hear it, I'm telling you right now. If you were behind the scenes in the locker room, you would be shocked at the type of race talk that goes on. Or don't you think team owners, do you think that they ignore race? You think when a team owner is looking for a new player that they ignore that fact? You should have heard what Marge Schott, who was a former owner of the Cincinnati Reds, called her players. Okay? Anyway. Based on various statistics, the percentage of African American players in the NBA has remained relatively constant over the past decade, fluctuating between 72 and 75%. The number of foreign-born players has increased exponentially to about 18%. The number of white players, meanwhile, has decreased from 24.3% in 1981 to roughly 10% now. The one white American player today who comes the closest to being a star is Kevin Love of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Of course, I guess Nash is Canadian, but anyway. He is averaging 21 points a game and 15 rebounds. He is on the West roster in the All-Star game. Do you know anybody who would pay to see Love play? It boils down to this. Are whites losing interest in a game in which the number of white American players not only continues to dwindle but no longer features a superstar? What was the name of that movie with Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson in it?
White man can't jump.
I think Kevin Love can jump. Is he going to win it? Here's another thing. When's the last time a white person won the slam dunk contest? But they win the three-point contest. You see how these stereotypes, how they get dug in? To the point where the people who have the stereotype applied to them believe this, that white players will only take three-point shots. Right? It's really strange. Because you're telling me there's no white people who can slam dunk the basketball. And we know there's black people who can shoot threes. Okay? LeBron's actually getting better at it. Anyway, my good friend and colleague Stephen Fry, that's a great name, who should change his last name Fry. No, maybe like fried calamari, that'd be kind of cool. When people ask him what the story is. Who has had season tickets to the Philadelphia 76ers for a decade and has written about, besides, he's probably about the NBA. He says he thinks my argument is more than simply terrible. Could be fried mozzarella sticks. While racism is a part of America and American sports and always will be, I really don't think the main problem with the NBA is racial, and I think it's kind of racist and certainly reductionist to say it is, Stephen told me. In a piece for Parade magazine last year, he wrote that the NBA game needed to be significantly modified to regain its former popularity, and talking with NBA watchers, he came up with 6 solutions to improve play, including shortening the 24-second clock. I don't think that'll make it better, that'll make it worse. Increasing the number of fouls for a player before fouling out, and shortening the season. Definitely shortening the season. Why do you think they don't shorten the season? Huh? It's money. That's why they wanted to slam 66 games into there, didn't they? How's that turning out for most of the players in the NBA? Yeah, I mean, my gosh, every single major player, every single big player except for LeBron has been hurt. Basically, right? Wade's been hurt. Kobe was hurt. All the main players for the Knicks have been hurt. Right? The Celtics are devastated by injuries. I mean, my gosh. You know, you'd think the players would be a little more upset. Maybe it's also because they were sitting around doing nothing for 3 months. They are good ideas, but I still believe race is a key deterrent in getting more whites re-engaged and increasing interest. It has to do with racial stereotyping. Those stereotypes are wrong. They are malicious. But to act as if they do not exist is disingenuous. When I wrote the book Friday Night Lights, this guy wrote this book. In high school football in Texas, I saw the racial stereotypes of some whites up close. I think this guy is white. Their firm belief that white athletes admirably succeed because of hustle and hard work and brains, and black athletes succeed solely on the basis of pure athletic skill. You know what story went around when I was a kid in the 80s? That black people had an additional muscle in their calves that made them jump higher. I'm not kidding you. I don't know if this is scientific fact. It probably isn't. But that's the type of stuff that was going on in the 80s when black people started to dominate the NBA and the NFL. What position don't black people dominate in the NFL?
Quarterback.
What a coincidence. How many black coaches are in the NFL?
Like 2 or 3.
While the starting positions are about 65% black. And the Tebow thing is this as well. If Tebow was black, would it have been different? Who knows? Because there have been a lot of quote-unquote running black quarterbacks. Vic, Randall Cunningham, Steve McNair, all these people. McNabb, Jamarcus Russell. Couldn't run more than 2 feet without falling down. I've never seen somebody play an entire game and only get 12 yards passing. And get paid millions. I mean, oh my gosh. Maybe, I don't know. He definitely didn't have any inherent skills. Although he was a big guy. In other words, white athletes virtuously worked their tails off, whereas black athletes simply coasted because they can. 20 years later, I think those beliefs still persist nationwide. I think it's why you hear more than you should how players in the NBA don't ever look as if they're trying. And yes, one of those who has said that was me. Lack of effort is what whites still assume of black athletes in basketball. They don't have sufficient desire. Their body language during timeouts connotes boredom. They are always looking in the stands for the next concubine. Listen to all this. They just don't have the blue-collar work ethic that makes great white athletes. And in the absence of a single white American superstar, Steve Nash is Canadian and alienates whites even more. I think also that a lot of people in general, not just white people in general, but one of the criticisms of the NBA is that it is a very self-centered game. It is a show-off sport. That you bounce around and you jump around and look at me and I'm going to shake my head in front of the camera and here's my team, look. Right? I mean, and oh, you're telling me that baseball players don't do that kind of stuff in the NFL. But baseball players get into fights over somebody pushed them off home plate. You know? Grown men kick dirt on other grown men in baseball. So, you know, I mean, so there are a lot of idiosyncrasies, but again, we have to sort of look at whether or not, how much of this is race, how much of this is maybe class as well, or a combination of these things. What class do most NBA players come out of, barring Kobe, because his dad was an NBA player, and he knows Italian, and he went to Beverly Hills High School and all this stuff. What class do most NBA players, regardless of the race, come out of? Yeah, lower or middle class. These are not, name me somebody, maybe Grant Hill, that came from a wealthy household, that became an NBA player. Why do you think a lot of wealthy people don't consider sports to be a viable alternative? Or even something they would even bother wanting to do professionally, at least? Because a lot of wealthy people, they play sports. High school and college. Why do you think that that's not something they want to do? What's your chances of becoming a professional athlete in this country? Even if you have talent. Near to nothing. Near to nothing. For every Michael Jordan, there's 100,000 people you've never even heard of. Okay? Whom a lot of them are working at Walmart. Okay? The chances of becoming a successful lawyer are probably a lot better if you go to Princeton, aren't they? And you're from a wealthy household. So it's seen as a plan B instead of a plan A. All right, let's move to Jeremy Lin. So let me show you a story here. This is on CNN. This is about Lin and race.
Hannity, Linspiration, thrilling. You gotta love all the love for Jeremy Lin. His personal story, his faith.
And I do want to say, people love Shaq like this.
We are embracing the all-American dream here. Well, almost everyone is.
Shaq's not average in any
tweeted
way.
this, quote,
Including his
Jeremy
height.
Lin is a good player, but all the hype is because he's Asian. Black players do what he does every night and they don't get the same praise. Lin's hype is
No, they haven't
Black players
made the
don't
Knicks
get
a better
the same
team.
praise. You know I had to talk about this with hip-hop public intellectual Mark Lamont Hill. Professor, you were pretty angry with Mayweather about this tweet. Why?
I was frustrated with Floyd. I love Floyd Mayweather, but he had this completely wrong. First of all, black players don't do this every night. Nobody does this every night. Over his first
He's a
six
professor. You
starts,
think
Jeremy
he
Lin
gets
set
bothered?
NBA scoring records.
He goes on the
Him, Allen
subway?
Iverson, Shaq. This is somebody who doesn't have the pedigree of basketball that you'd expect from a starter on the New York Knicks, and yet somehow he made it. This is a guy that people thought was the trainer when he walked into the Madison Square Garden, and now suddenly he's starting and scoring 38 on Kobe. I mean, that's the greatest story ever.
So let me
You
ask
said
you
you think
this.
he was dropping
you
off
know,
food
we
or
hear,
something.
like Linsanity, right? That's the main thing that we hear anyway, and it's an awesome compliment. But Mark, we've also seen a Jackie Chan of basketball, great fried rice hype, air dumpling, fortune rookie. I mean, are we really that?
If you go to China, most of the stuff we call Chinese food doesn't exist
I
there.
think, first of all, people still have this sense of bewilderment and surprise that this guy can play basketball.
Like fortune cookies are not even Chinese,
Technically, the racial slurs that
Serious.
like what we saw with ESPN, or the kind of...
Mark, why is that a problem? Why is it a problem that an Asian can play basketball?
Well, we don't have a script for it. We have scripts for what black men can do. We have scripts for what white women can do.
That's
we have
the
scripts for what
social
Asian men
construction.
can do. If this guy won a spelling bee or built a plane, no one would be surprised. But we have scripts for basketball that say that black males
Computer
can be
expert, is that what it
dominated
is?
sport, and maybe really, really tall white guys. And he challenges that script.
If he made
So what we
origami,
also
would that be better?
do is make him so unique and special that we deny the everyday talents of black people. So I hear people, for example, say, Jeremy Lin studies film at halftime. Every basketball player looks at film at halftime.
I don't know about that.
Oh, he's so
Not
smart.
every
He's so
one of
big.
them.
He knows how to read a pick and roll. Well, so does Isaiah Thomas. So does Chris Paul. I mean, throughout history, there have been black players that do this too. So we don't want to ignore the racial dimensions, but let's not reduce him to some caricature.
It's just the same
that's
if-
the problem.
If you had an Asian person
There's so
in
much,
hockey, it
talk
would
and
be
smack,
similar.
right? Everybody going off on each other, especially in the
Right?
touring
Or a
world.
Latino
So,
person in hockey.
just
It would be
honestly,
similar.
Mark,
It would be
his
strange.
character really
And especially if they were the
triumphs
greatest.
here as well. Let's
They were like
just
Wayne
listen
Gretzky.
to his response to the most recent racial slur.
Have to learn to forgive, and I
He's
don't
talking
even
about
think that was,
the thing about the
intentional.
armor thing.
Hopefully not.
Learn to forgive, not intentional. What a classy kid. He's showing us more than just a
What do
great
you want him
ball
to
player
do?
here.
Call for somebody to be lynched?
He's a good guy. He has great character. He's humble. He has some swag to him now. He chest bumps and grabs his jersey. And
So what are you
sticks out
trying to
his
say,
tongue
that
and
Asian
hits a
people
three?
don't do that?
Again, let's not turn him. Let's not turn him into Martin
He's not an
Luther King here.
angel? Oh, okay.
No, he's not an angel. No, he's not an angel. But he's a good guy, and he's handling this really well, and I'm really proud of him. And I'm excited to see this story. It's great for the league, it's great for the NBA, and it's great for players everywhere.
Well, it's an intrigue discussion, and it's been an intrigue discussion among the Asian community as well. I mean, it's been really neat to see how it has rallied that community. They have embraced a star
You hear this
within
word,
their
they.
culture, for sure.
Absolutely. It's sad that the Knicks will still lose to my Philadelphia 76ers at the end of this year.
And they're
but
not
it's
calling him a
great story.
Taiwanese
I'm
American.
glad
They're
the
calling him an
community is
Asian
galvanizing around him. And
American.
again,
Get it
he's an
right.
inspiration to young people, not just of the Asian community, but everywhere. He's a reminder of what
Taiwan is not all of Asia. It's an
he
island about this
destroys
big.
barriers. He breaks down
Yeah.
barriers. He reminds us of what's possible.
I mean, China's going to put it in his pocket one day and walk away with it.
But he's a good story.
Let's look at it for what it is. Mark Lamont Hill.
There you go.
Thanks for weighing in.
And there's that thing bothers me. If I was especially whether if I was Indian or Chinese, and you call both of the people there Asian, hey, I'm Indian. Okay, I'm not Chinese.
Here's an energy you can feel. Jobs.
Here's an energy you can feel.
Affordable energy.
Shut
Generated by the
up.
most abundant domestic.
Feel that energy, losers. Anyway, so here's another article here about, and this guy is a professor of English and Asian American Studies. And again, these things have, when a college codifies the words Asian American, and again, I don't even know what that means. I don't know what that means. There are Russians in Asia too. Okay, I mean, there's a problem with that term. I knew some people from Siberia. They were not Chinese or Mongolian. They were Yakutian. And by the way, this guy used to, when he would fall asleep, he would speak in 3 different languages in his sleep. It was hilarious. He's speaking English, Russian, and Yakutian. But he is not Chinese. And Koreans aren't Chinese. And Japanese people aren't Chinese. And Indians aren't Chinese. And Indonesian. How about Australians? Aren't they Asian? Sort of? Asian Pacific? There used to be Caucasian people in the Japanese islands. I'm not making this stuff up. There used to be white people in northern India. So what does this mean? So there's a problem right there, right? But here we go. The spectacular rise of Jeremy Lin, the first Asian American to achieve basketball stardom. And again, if he was playing golf or something else, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Has been utterly thrilling to witness. We've watched with pride. You notice, look, nobody complains that Tiger Woods got too much attention, do they? So I think this is somewhat similar, right? Tiger, that's odd that a black person would be. And similar with remember the Williams sisters in tennis?
Yeah.
Right? Although they need to get their act together, playing too much fashion games. Anyway, get back to tennis. We watched with pride as he's broken through, and this is a Chinese American, this is him right here, speaking about this. Can play alongside and beat the best in the NBA, and we've been gratified by the way Lin's story has been embraced by the American public, with fans of all races cheering him on. But we've also been reminded the ugliness with Asians have often been depicted in American culture. Exhibit number 1. 2 broke girls and a character named Han Lee. Uh-oh, this video was removed. No. No, it hasn't.
I've been watching about all my life.
What you'll see here in a minute, and you see this other one that says Han's Flash Mob, is it what we call classic stereotypical character. This is a brand new show. This is not from 1982. This is not from 1963. This is from 2012, if this commercial will ever end. What business is this? Because I'm never going to go to you. Is this Red Lobster? You just lost a customer for the Red Lobster. I don't like lobster anyway. I'll remember that, Red Lobster.
You don't like lobster?
I don't like companies that ruin YouTube. Quit it.
Chocolate.
Mac, we got big trouble from Little China.
Hi, Nix.
Big trouble? There's nothing big about him. He looks like I won him in a bear claw machine.
Mac, what is the worst sentence you ever want to hear come out of Han's mouth?
I got you pregnant?
Come on, bad.
I got you pregnant again?
I'm putting in karaoke.
No!
See, now he's making fun of the way he talks.
Han, those guys better be up there because we're officially putting ass crack on the menu.
I am adding a TV to bring in more customers. We can have theme nights, ultimate fighting night.
See, he's neat, he can't speak English right.
And best of all,
he's short.
karaoke night.
You can't give hipsters a microphone. That's like throwing gasoline on a pretentious fire.
Hipsters like karaoke.
Replace the word like with the word Hitler, and you've got the 3 worst things in history.
Max, I hear what you say, but everybody else say, hey, where my single ladies?
See, and some of you guys thought that was funny. From The Office. Michael Scott doing his character called Ping.
Hello, everybody! You know my card?
Oh, yeah. I thought you were left.
No, I just decided to stay.
Oh.
I just get a ride home from Angela.
I'm on the card, Jeremy Lin.
Oh, good. I'm just in time for ping.
Oh, gotta be fair. And Mr. Horton, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Can I get a drink?
Oh, yeah.
Let's go back a little further. Revenge of the Nerds.
Have a fucking chance, nerd.
Oh, thank you. Good luck to you too, Bud.
Fuck off.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
This is like fraternity games. You hear them playing, he's Japanese. So they're playing his Japanese music. He actually wins. They gave him pills to keep alcohol from absorbing into his... But in this, he's a nerd and he's a science person.
It covers all effects of alcohol in your system. Okay, get the whole beer. Go! Come on, Danny! Come on, buddy! Who's out? Pick his ass!
If you've never seen this movie, it's absolutely... Other than the stereotypes, it's absolutely hilarious. Anthony Edwards is in it. He plays one of the nerds. That's him.
Oh, fucking great.
And that's some kind of supposedly some kind of famous song. It's about flowers or something.
changing, Betty. These nerds are a threat to our way of life.
If they went home.
Here is Raj from The Big Bang Theory. If it wasn't good enough that they had to bother Chinese and Japanese people, now here's Indians. And you really want me to get into Apu Nahasapima Pedalon? Oh, yes?
Billions of dollars have gone into inventing the internet and filling it with pictures of naked women so we don't have to peek through windows. It's not like that. I'm watching someone's TV. The Good Wife is on.
This one isn't too bad of a stereotype, but there are a lot of moments.
Sheldon, I've hidden the dirty sock from the roof somewhere in your apartment. Unless you're willing to come with us to meet this girl, it will remain there forever. You're bluffing. Are you willing to risk it? Curse you.
Okay, forget giant ants. How about giant rabbits?
Big or small, I don't like rabbits. They always look like they're about to say something.
Here's where Apu's trying to be American.
I bet this place sells illegal fireworks.
Wait a minute, this is...
Just go in and act casual like you buy them all the time.
We'll just do this one. These should be comments that Apu makes.
It is a great dishonor to my ancestors and my God. But okay, please do not offer my God a peanut. Oh, they used nylon rope this time. It feels so smooth against my skin. Almost sensuous. Apu, Nahasapima Petidon. We're putting that bitch on ice. Please pay for your purchases and get out and come again. Hello, steady customer. How are you this evening, sir? Yes, I'm sorry, I do not speak English. Okay.
But you were just talking to...
Watch this one. This is from the movie 16 Candles. This guy's name is Long Duck Dong.
Howard, he's dead.
Oh, shit. I paid $7,000 for a wedding, I'll never see it.
Oh, watch your language, Mr. Dirty Mouth.
Oh, thank God, he is still warm.
Oh, good.
Here,
Canine cologne. Oh, no more Yankee, my Winky. The dongle needs food. Well, he's 3 sheets to the wind. He's drunk as a skunk.
Oh, why don't you shut up, Fred? Shut up. Dong. Dong.
Dom, Grandpa is talking to you.
Dong. Where is my automobile?
Automobile?
Alright, I think you get the point. So those are the stereotypes that he's talking about. It says, after Lin's 38-point performance against the Los Angeles Lakers on February 10th, Fox Sports columnist Jason Whitlock tweeted an offensive joke about Lin that played off stereotypes of Asians' lack of masculinity. You should hear some of the things Eddie Murphy said in the 80s about Asian people and their body parts in particular. Okay. Boxer Floyd Mayweather has asserted that all the hype around Lin is just because he's Asian. When after New Orleans snapped the Knicks' Lin-led 7-game winning streak, ESPN posted a story with a headline that was an obvious anti-Chinese slur. Mayweather here. Lin hype is based on race, not talent. Stereotypes of Asians have been a staple of American popular culture since the 19th century, from newspaper cartoons of menacing buck-toothed Chinese to film characters like the evil Dr. Fu Manchu and the bowing, pigeon-speaking Charlie Chan. If you've ever seen Breakfast at Tiffany's or read the movie, there's Mickey Rooney actually plays the Chinese, or either Chinese or Japanese, because he does such a bad job of that. And he does this stereotypical with the buck teeth and the miso sorry, that kind of talk. Does Jeremy Lin sound like that? And again, he's Taiwanese, not Asian. So anyway, in contemporary American Asians, again with this word, when they appear at all, and if I was Indian or Indonesian or something, I would be mad that it appears that Chinese people are trying to hijack that word. It doesn't mean just essentially when people say Asian, isn't that the main thing that some people think about when they think Chinese people? I mean, there are, in defense, there are 1.3 billion Chinese people on this planet. Okay, so 1 in 5 people on this planet are essentially Chinese. Anyway, are generally depicted as comical foreigners with Ching Chong accents from exchange students Long Duck Dong. What's Happening, Hot Stuff, and 16 Candles, the Han Lee, the stereotyped Korean restaurant owner and CBS hit comedy Two Broke Girls. American culture tells us, in short, that Lin shouldn't exist. Every time he drives to the basket, he upends stereotypes of Asians as short, weak, and nerdy. Every time, I think Yao Ming did probably a lot to stop the short stuff. Every time he talks to the media, he dispels the idea that all Asian Americans are like foreigners speaking broken English. Throughout his career, Lin has endured racist taunts from opponents and fans, and he's been overlooked repeatedly. After a spectacular high school career, no college offered him a scholarship. Think if he was a different race, if that would have been different. Okay, I'm sure Harvard had no problem taking him. After he started Harvard, no NBA team drafted him. He was dropped by Golden State and Houston before landing on the Knicks, and the Knicks almost dropped him too. And he only got a shot when his team got desperate. So without these injuries, he wouldn't have been out there. It reminds me a little bit of Tom Brady, that if Drew Bledsoe wouldn't have got hurt, Brady would have just sat on the bench and might have gotten traded and retired. If you're a Jets fan, you'd have loved that. Anyway, even as Linsanity gripped the nation, commentators and fellow players continued to play down Lin's talents, from the declaration that Lin was a fluke and a flash in the pan to Kobe Bryant's grudging comment that Lin was a testament to perseverance and hard work, not natural talent. Okay? The message was clear. Asian Americans don't really belong on the basketball court. We've heard again and again that no one knew how good Lin was. Don't you have eyes? But let's get real. Lin was overlooked because when people looked at him, they saw a stereotype, not of basketball stars. Lin led the Knicks to a victory after victory. I watched with giddy excitement, but also a sense of worry. What would happen when the inevitable loss came? And to end this, because we're running out of time, on Tuesday, one of the other things we'll do, besides going over the test is too on Tuesday, correct? Okay. So, does anybody have, if anybody has any questions, we did go over all the tests, but feel free to email me this weekend. One of the things that we'll do is, by transitioning into our next section, I do want to take some time and look at this study about, it's a short piece about ethnic stereotypes on TV shaping people's attitudes. Because that was actually a study that was done on Long Island in the 1990s. And what it revealed at the very minimum is that people learn about other people that they're unfamiliar with from the television. So if you're a young white person in Minnesota or Wisconsin and you have no black people, and all you do is watch Tyler Perry, what image do you get of black people? You get one singular, and I'm not saying Tyler Perry presents black people in necessarily bad light, but that's one way, right? Or if all you know was, imagine if all you knew about black people was the TV show Being Bobby Brown. Would that be a good image? Or from the NBA, right? And this is Black History Month. I doubt people realize that the air conditioner was invented by a black man. And I'll tell you right now, I couldn't be more appreciative. Invent the air conditioner, one of the greatest inventions of all time. Forget the airplane, all the stupid stuff. If you've ever lived in Ohio, 98 degrees and 100% humidity, there's nowhere to go when it's hot, except for to die. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. If you have any questions on the test, email me. Remember to start the time-bind book. Think about these issues we discussed, because we'll come back to this race and gender and social construction.